and you don't need to worry about the underlying development, then you're looking at blockchain architects, and they tend to come from network infrastructure backgrounds. Or, I mean, it really depends who you ask, but as already answered, software development is probably at the top of the list.
Any more questions?
Are there many companies actually using blockchains on a sort of daily basis? Or is it still just at project stage for 99% of these ideas?
There are thousands of startups using it because they can get money out of it very quickly.
Can I add to that as well? Can we also look at in Thailand as well, as opposed to everywhere else?
I don't know the exact answer to that. I don't know. Will has.
I don't know the quantifiable answer.
But I think it's kind of at that innovation development stage where lots of people are saying, we have this problem, blockchain can in theory solve it, let's spend some money working out if it can solve it. I think GDPR coming out next month is particularly timely. I don't know how many people know the ins and outs of GDPR, but it's going to be a complete and utter pain. And blockchain is quite a nice application to that problem. So realistically, I don't know how many people have it in production now, beyond the currencies that we see and the thousands of startups that are using it for something, whether it's legal arbitration through to transmitting records. You even see it in things like electric cars now who are using different types of currencies to make micropayments. So I don't know, but my guess is it's going to get a lot more very quickly. But you know, we're still very, very early in the technology stages of it. So unless something rather scary happens and we realise it's all just a joke, it was just going to get bigger. Do you have a sort of use for it?
No, that was my question really. A lot of people, there seem to be a lot of ideas, but so far doesn't really seem to be. We seem to be sort of almost getting there, but not. It always seems to be like 6 months off.
Yeah, it does seem to be cryptocurrency, doesn't it? Where are the other uses? Well, where are the uses in banking right now? Beyond just the currency.
So I think you're right about what you're saying, and if you're constantly seeing things being put 6 months off, that's because they are. The reasons for that we could talk about all day, but to try and answer your question, I can say with some certainty that every bank, I can say with some certainty that at least 8 banks I've dealt with in the past have blockchain projects privately underway. I can say that Africa is looking at blockchains from east to west for various different problems. And Chris, the chap who I'm standing in for today, was that right? Oh, he was after Mr. Porriman. Yeah. One of the other speakers who has spoken at BCCT before has a cybersecurity company in Chiang Mai. They are quite heavily involved in Africa, and they're getting a lot of questions about blockchain now. The government's looking at, I think it's Zimbabwe perhaps, is looking at a way to peg it to another currency to solve their problems. Bless them. So I think that the answer is a lot more than we see. But a business, in terms of innovating with new technology, I mean, as mentioned, we're very early on this, and everyone's focused on the money right now. I think that's probably, yeah, there are a lot of them looking at it, but concrete, hard to say. I think hospitals will be the next wave. But the Estonian government, X-Road is the project, X-Road, is doing a lot of interesting stuff with blockchains as well.
Go for it.
Just on that vein, if I may, does that mean that blockchain is out of the price bracket of the average SME, and only available to the big corporations?
I mean, I don't really have an answer to that other than I think it depends what you're trying to do. If you want to use it to raise funds, I think it's possible. If you want to use it to transfer data, I think it's possible. If you want to try something, if you have a particular problem that you're trying to solve with it and it hasn't been done already, then I would say that the R&D involved in that is probably going to be higher than most SMEs are willing to spend.
Forward,
Yeah.
Yeah, getting away from the financing, because it's obvious that startups and other SMEs are using it for financing, but I wanted to get a line on practical applications for the average MSC, even if it's just data storage and stuff like that. Is there?
So, yeah, I mean, a few of my friends are doing the development of it, and they're being paid thousands of pounds every day,
Which is a problem.
which is potentially a problem for some SMEs. Because if they want a team of them doing development and research for them, just is this problem, is a solution possible? It's going to cost quite a lot of money. I don't know if you can add to that.
My experience is a little bit different. I would say that, and that's probably because we've been working in different areas, and it's interesting to hear that. I think for most SMEs now, if you can identify a problem that matches one of the three things that we just talked about, you only need to hire one junior software developer who can speak Golang or perhaps some Python, and who's enthusiastic about blockchains. And I think you'll have a minimum viable product for you solution to your problem within half a year, if not sooner. Now, it may be completely useless. It may be a journey of discovery wherein you learn that you're going to need to put a lot of money into R&D. Or you may find out, again, it just really depends, because some problems actually, when you reduce them, are very simple to solve with blockchain. If they match clearly to one of these three business use cases. By the way, I think that 3 is a finite list. I don't think there is any others that I mean, there are when you go, but they all build onto one of those 3 things.
Yeah, well, picking up on that, we mentioned earlier that it was actually cheaper. One of the mentioned it was cheap. That's one of the benefits about it. But obviously, it's not cheap because it's not there. It's cheap once you've spent millions of dollars making it.
No, if I gave that impression, I apologize. That's not what I believe personally. In the case of Bitcoin, in the case of Ethereum, if anyone's heard of Ethereum, a few nods. So Ethereum is kind of perhaps the next generation on Bitcoin, depending on who you ask. These are public open source projects, so you can do what coders like to call forking. Okay, forking. Don't misunderstand me there. Forking is where you take someone else's open source code, which maybe they've spent the last 8 or 5 or 4 years working on, and because of its open source based or relevant license, whether it's open license or Apache 2 license or whatever it may be, your company can take all that hard work, say thank you very much, and start developing on top of it today for nothing other than the cost of the staff, that one junior guy I mentioned, if it's new, or one of your existing software programmers if you happen to have them. And if you have them, unless you're involved in a very particular vertical with a very particular vendor, you probably have someone who is interested in Python or Go or one of those blockchain-related languages. And if they're not, they can learn Solidity, which is Ethereum's programming language, in a week.
Generous.
If they're smart.
You just mentioned Python and another. How many versions of blockchain technology are there? Or language? Not technology, language.
Don't know.
And I just want to point out that I'm not smart enough to learn Solidity in 1 week. I am not a programmer, okay? I do have some programmers working with me and they're very smart. I'm not one of them. To answer your question, I don't know, but I would say that there are a lot of projects that are developing, like I just explained, on top of someone else's hard work. And that's okay. The people who did that hard work did it for that purpose. They want that to happen. They have their own reasons for wanting this technology to be used and tested and built upon by as many people as possible. And especially when it comes to the cryptography, it's really important to get as many people testing cryptography that's used in new ways as possible, because if you try and do what Sony did with cryptography, which is where they did the DVD protection, DRM, spent a lot of money on protecting these DVDs to stop us all copying them. I think a teenager in Wales broke that within 12 hours. And then they came up with DRM v2, and then a teenager in Scotland broke it within 72 hours. That's what happens when you don't let the whole world test cryptography. And blockchains rely on cryptography to a large extent. So people want to share their hard work. And I think there are probably Bitcoin, Ethereum, Hyperledger, R3 Corda. Hyperledger is the one called Fabric. I would say that, and I'm really sorry to anyone who knows of other fundamental ones, but those are the four kind of most fundamental relevant to business right now. But there are lots and lots of others, like the Chinese Neo and NEM. I would say less than 100 that are really big projects that are being supported. Probably less than 50 actually, but more than 30, if I had to guess. But in terms of how many copies of those people's hard work there is out there, trying to be the next Bitcoin, thousands and thousands and thousands.
How much would it cost a regulator to adopt your platform, like say for immigration?
To use the IAP
Yep.
for an immigration blockchain?
Yes.
Wow, okay, that's a really cool use case. So how much would it cost? The IAP is being built, like some of the other projects I mentioned, for the public good, ultimately. So you wouldn't, or an application like that wouldn't pay us, the creators of the IAP, to use it. However, because it's a public blockchain, it needs some crypto-economic incentives, is what they call it, right? And this is to ensure and guarantee ethical behavior on the network. And that means that there has to be some value in the coins, or the currency that underlies it all, and they have to be something that people care about in order to prevent them or incentivize them to do things, to follow the rules, and be punished when they don't, as in losing that value. Now, the way that an application, say your company, was going to make an immigration blockchain tomorrow, which by the way is a very good idea, we'll have to talk later. If that was going to be built on the IAP, which I think is a perfect use case for the IAP, the cost to the application there would be an on-demand cost. So you would have some of these tokens, the IAP tokens, and every time you used a tool in the tool belt that this platform provides, it may cost one token.
Okay.
So you would then put that, and imagine what you would do is put that cost onto the customer. So where it costs perhaps $1 for a token, you may say it's $1.50 for them because you provide the additional value, such as support and all of your special software.
Right.
Which means that companies are freed up to provide to have business models that include licensing or any type of business model, but they would only ever pay for what they actually use on the platform.
Like, for example, like the immigration department charges anybody who enters the country anywhere from 1,200 to about 3,000 baht, right, depending on what kind of visa you're using. So, just for the sake of knowing, I want to know what the cost would be. So
significantly cheaper, I would imagine. And a very good idea.
Do we have any more questions?
Can I just ask
Rob, yeah?
Just wanted to ask about what you said about the hashing of the private blockchain for audit. It sounds like a great idea. I was just wondering, is that blockchain specific, or could they use that for other data stores for audit?
Yes and yes. So no and yes. They can use it for non-blockchain stuff. And I mean, at its simplest, what we're talking about there is a hash digest of a document. So you may have a file that's called my company's budget.xls, and it's an Excel file with all your budget and your spending and for the year ahead. If you want to make sure that somebody hasn't crept into your email and changed the numbers in there while you were asleep, you can make a hash of that document using free and available software. There's one on your machine right now, whether it's Windows or Mac or anything else. You can make a hash of that, and all a hash is a short little series of numbers, as you may know yourself, that represent the contents of that file. If any single tiny thing in that file gets changed, the hash will not be the same the next time you run the hash against it. So that is used now every day to guarantee that nobody came and messed with our files. And it's used on all kinds of things already built into your operating system, databases, identity stuff, passwords. Even passwords are actually stored not as passwords but as hashes of your password to enhance the security. So yes, it can be used for many different things. Blockchains just combined with it are providing a next sort of added benefit.
Any more questions? Okay, I'd like to finish then on supercomputing. We mentioned supercomputing is likely to become an unknown when. Have you any idea how far down the line we are with supercomputing and exactly what benefits it's actually going to bring to us for business?
You'll have to answer this one.
So, this is the question everybody wants to know the answer to, right? But I can tell you in my personal experience where projects that I've been involved in are at. When it comes to distributed computing, there are at least 6 projects that I'm aware of right now that all have really good teams. One of them is the team that I just left, and I didn't contribute anything useful to that, unfortunately, but they're very good. And that's the Plasma team at Go. Plasma is a technology that's looking to use blockchains to basically provide this kind of distributed computing, although right now they're focused on money and not the computing side. There's another guy, another set of guys, the Loom network, who are here in Bangkok also, and they have already released, also based on Ethereum, a way to create distributed applications like this, and they have solved some part, or seem to have solved some part of the scalability solution. And again, this distributed computing is all about how we scale blockchains, because right now the Bitcoin blockchain can only handle a certain number of transactions per minute per second. I think it's something like 5 or 7. And Ethereum, which is kind of the next gen according to some people, can handle, I think, at the moment 15 to 17. So that's a problem when you're thinking about not just money being handled across it, but also transactions with databases and data and the kind of computing that you're referring to. So it's all about how do we make these things faster without sacrificing other important things like the decentralization, the security, or the cost of engaging. So there's Loom. They're an interesting local Thai company that's trying to solve this problem. There's Plasma, which was authored by Joseph Poon and Vitalik Buterin, who are 2 very smart guys at the top of Ethereum and being worked on by Go for payments. A very great team they have there. And there's also, I think, Cosmos, Tendermint, and a few others I'm forgetting. So right now we're in a situation where the leader among that pack has already released a kind of network that they call production, which is why I said that. We are seeing it emerging. It's not just someone's bright idea, it is kind of working. But they released it in March. So we're in April now, right? So we're very, very early.
Okay, do we have any more questions? No? Okay. Well, I'd like to say thank you very much to our speakers, to Will and Gareth. Very informative. A little technical and sometimes, but great to hear. Okay, we've still got half an hour or so for networking, and I can see a few drinks back there. So help yourself. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Sure. Cheers. There are some countries that are basically trying to do that. There isn't an established It's something that we want to do. I think it's a reason it's regulation. We need because we're so early.
How are you doing? That's right. I am, yes. Well, not really, but blockchain. So, yeah. Yes, hi.